What is up everyone, Donnie Survives back with another video. Today I'll be covering Core Keeper and how to set yourself up for success in the early game. I'll be going over the 3 most important resources and walking you through managing them early, so you get to spend more time worrying about defeating bosses and progressing through the game. Now, the most important resource is food. You will find yourself early game surviving from random mushrooms or berries that you find as you explore. This will become an issue, so I will go over how to make sure that you have an abundance of food. Now, the second most important resource is minerals. You will run around mining and coming across random ore, and if you don't manage your minerals correctly, you can find yourself stuck and depleted. The last resource we will go over is wood. Wood is finite unless you take the extra precaution and make sure that it is readily available. Now, before we jump in and tackle these issues, please make sure to like and subscribe for more gaming content. I focus mainly on survival games and making a lot of beginner guides and beginner content to help players get started. As I mentioned earlier, food is your number one source in Core Keeper. You will constantly find yourself starving as you explore through the map. This is a problem in many ways because if you starve for too long, you will start receiving a debuff which lowers your maximum health and damage output. In the early game, you combat this by scarfing down the mushrooms and berries that you come across. However, there is better use for these mushrooms and berries and a way to ensure that you have an abundance of them. When it comes to food types that you can consume, the other option is fishing. You can easily make a wooden fishing pole from a copper workbench with 5 pieces of wood. You want to head over to a body of water and toss your line into a small school of fish. You can eat the fish for a quick snack, which will help give your health a boost and bring up your food levels, ensure that you don't starve and lose stats. Now, something cool that Core Keeper does is that it allows you to create a cooking pot, which you will use to mix different vegetables with fish to create higher levels of food that provides you with different types of buffs. Some empowered food buffs give you more physical damage, range damage, armor, or even make you immune to the movement speed of slime. You'll be able to craft the cooking pot from the wooden workbench for 2 wood pieces and 4 copper bars. Now, in order to ensure that you have the abundance of empowered food, not only will you need to fish often, but you will need to have the available berries and vegetables to go with it. The only way to do this is to start up a garden early. Now, you might think this will take a lot of work, but you'll be surprised that with just a few pieces of wood and copper ore, you will have everything that you will need. You will first want to craft a hoe. You can either craft a wooden hoe, or if you already have a copper workbench, you can craft a copper hoe. The higher tier of the hoe, the more spaces you can till and harvest at a time. Once you have created and designed your gardening area and have prepared the ground, you will want to plant as many berries, vegetable seeds, and even fiber as possible. Once you have planted your seeds, you will need to water them in order for them to grow. You can then head over to the wood workbench and craft a watering can with 4 copper ore. Now, to attain the water, you have 2 options. You can either run over to a local body of water and fill your watering can, or you can use a wash basin and place it next to your crops. This will allow you to quickly refill your watering can and water your seeds. Now, after a few minutes, the seeds will turn into harvestable plants for you to harvest and use to either eat on their own or to be used to create empowered meals. I do recommend creating a storage chest near your cooking pot or a garden to store the food, because as you rinse and repeat, you will come to find out that you have an endless amount of food. As a reminder, this is something that you can work on in the first 30 minutes of your playthrough to establish a very strong food economy. I'm going to include a graphic that shows roughly how much material you will need to get this started. You're looking at 8 wood for the wooden workbench, 8 wood and 6 copper bars for the copper workbench, 4 copper bars for the watering can, and either 4 wood pieces for a wooden hoe or 4 wood pieces and 2 copper bars for the copper hoe. Now, I should add that in order to smelt the ore into bars, you will need to craft a furnace, which requires 20 dirt blocks. You can easily get these blocks from mining around. I recommend making at least 2 furnaces to speed up the smelting process. So now that we have a booming food economy, the second important resource we need is a steady income of ore. We can't spend the entire time mining into the void in hopes to locate enough ore for all the tools that you will need. So the best solution for this is to locate a mining node and marking them as a reference onto your map. You won't be able to mine these nodes with your pickaxe. You will actually need to create a drill setup with crude drills. I strongly recommend starting your drill setup as early as you can, and starting with tin and then moving on to iron and gold. You can find tin around and in the clay caves, so you are bound to finding a mining node in that area. Once you have located your mining node, there are a few things that you will need in order to make this a reality. You will first need to unlock the tin workbench, which will cost you 10 wood, 6 copper, and 10 tin bars. Creating the tin workbench allows you to unlock the automation table, which holds the crude drills. You will also need to create an electronics table from the copper workbench, which requires 8 wood and 8 copper bars. So the reason you need to create the electronics table is because you will need to power up the crude drills and let them go to work. You will need to craft 3 electrical wire, which costs 1 copper bar, and a lever which generates a low amount of power. The lever requires 3 wood and 2 copper bars to craft. At the start, you might not have the tin resources to create 8 crude drills, which will cost you a total of 64 tin bars. So take as many as you can afford and start the process as soon as you gain access to any amount of tin. Now let's talk about the setup. Once you're at the node, you will place 2 crude drills on each side of the node. You will then create an electrical circuit by placing the electrical wire on the corners. Once you have placed the lever down and hit the switch, the drills will go to work. Creating this early mineral economy allows you to continue playing the game while ore builds up for you. Once you have the drill set up, you can visit the node at any time. You might need ore and there will be a pile of ore waiting for you. I like to move a waypoint to the ore I need most. It lets me quickly teleport to and from. You can easily move a waypoint by using a couple of crude drills. Alright, so we went over quite a bit of things you will need for your mineral drill setup. I am going to put a graphic up for all the materials that is needed. As you can see, for the tin workbench, it requires 10 wood, 6 copper bars, and 10 tin bars. The automation table requires 5 copper bars and 8 tin bars. The electronics table requires 8 wood and 8 copper, and the electrical wire requires 1 copper. The lever does require 3 wood and 2 copper bars, and crude drills require 8 tin bars. Ideally, you will run 8 crude drills, which is a total of 64 tin bars. Alright, perfect. So now that we have a booming food and mineral economy, the last thing I want to advise you to set up is a wood farm. Now, I recommend doing this last because at the start of the game, you will have access to a lot of wood. But as time goes on, you will see that wood might become more and more difficult to come by. So let's talk about what you will need for this wood farm. The great thing is, if you have the food and mineral economy going, you pretty much have everything that you need for the wood farm. The only thing that you can add to make the wood farm easier to gather is a conveyor belt. So this is how the wood farm works. You will plant at least 5 root seeds. These root seeds will grow and become wood. Now the way that you set this up is that you will lay the 5 seeds in a line. You will then leave a space in front of each seed, giving it room to grow. You will then place a crude drill which will break the wood down once it grows. You can set a conveyor belt behind the drill to move all of the wood to one spot, making it easier to gather. Now I do recommend setting up some wooden floors around the seeds to ensure that the wood grows in one direction towards the crude drill. Now this might not seem like much, but it will add up as time goes by. You can always grow this farm as you need. So we went over the 3 most important economies and how to set them up. I did create a graphic to showcase overall all the items and materials that you will need to make this. Feel free to pause the video and jot them down. For a quick rundown, you will need a wooden workbench, a wooden hoe or a copper hoe, copper workbench, watering can, tin workbench, automation table, electronics table, electrical wire, a lever, 2 furnaces, up to 8 crude drills per node, and 5 conveyor belts. And that's going to wrap up my thoughts on this one here. If this breakdown helped you, make sure to leave a like. It really helps the channel grow. If you enjoy deep dives into survival and progression focused games, consider subscribing. We got a lot more coming, and if you want to see these games tested live, follow me over at twitch.tv/DonnieSurvives. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.